Good morning, everyone. We are still having people log on, but I think it's best that we kind of get the ball rolling this morning. So first, I would like to say good morning and welcome to our Liberal Breakfast, co-hosted by the ALDE Party and the Friedrich Naumann Foundation Europe, and also welcome to all of those who are tuning in via our Facebook Live. So this morning, our conversation will focus on gender equality and more specifically, how we can begin to create lasting, sustainable change in the fight for equality that goes beyond quotas. So before I introduce our wonderful speakers for this morning, I would like to quickly mention some housekeeping rules. So there will be a question and answer portion towards the end of our event. So if at any point during the discussion, you would like to ask a question to one of our panelists, please do so by using the Q&A function here on Zoom. And if you're watching on Facebook Live, please post your questions in the comment section, as both will be continually monitored throughout the discussion. So now it is my pleasure to introduce to you our panel for this morning. So giving our opening remarks, we have Thomas Ilke, who is the Regional Director of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation Europe since 2019. As the Director of the European Dialogue, he is responsible for the activities of the offices in Brussels and Prague, and the projects initiated from these offices in European countries such as the UK, France, Spain, and Hungary. Before joining the foundation, Mr. Ilke was the head of European affairs of the German Insurance Association in Brussels and Berlin. Moderating our event this morning is Adam Vink, who is the project manager of the ALDE Party's European Women's Academy, a program which aims to promote gender equality in politics and decision-making across Europe by empowering women that want to be active in liberal politics. Adam recently led the development of Plan International's global Girls Get Equal campaign, which calls for more power, freedom, and representation for girls and young women. Adam's advocacy efforts also helped to establish the International Day of the Girl via a UN resolution in 2011, as well as spark a decade of action and investment in girls' education around the world. Our first panelist is Liesje Schrijnemacher. Liesje is a Dutch member of the European Parliament for the Renew Europe group after winning her seat in 2019. After finishing her studies in law and communication science, Liesje started her career as a political assistant to 2 Dutch MPs before serving as the political advisor to the Dutch Minister of Defense. Prior to becoming a member of the European Parliament, Liesje was an attorney at law in construction and procurement law. In the European Parliament, Liesje is a member of the Committees for International Trade, Judicial Affairs, Internal Markets, and Consumer Protection. She is committed to building a fair European market and trade policy, both offline and online, in which a fair playing field must always be the basis. Our second panelist for this morning is Monica Semero. Monica is a Luxembourgish MEP and a former journalist and TV host with more than 2 decades of professional experience. She graduated from the University of Trier with a master's degree in political science, as well as in Russian and Spanish literature. Monica was elected to the European Parliament in 2019, where she sits with the Renew Europe group. In the European Parliament, Monica is a member of the Committees for Employment and Social Affairs, Economic and Monetary Affairs, Culture and Education, and Petitions. Monica is also a member of the delegation to the ACP EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly, relations with the countries of the Andean Community, and the Euro-Latin American Parliamentary Assembly. In addition, Monica is co-chair of the Social Economy Intergroup and a member of the Anti-Racism and Diversity Intergroup. So now I am happy to turn it over to Thomas Ilke for our opening remarks before handing it over to Adam to begin our discussion. Thank you very much, and don't forget to ask questions.
Thank you so much, Natalie, for this impressive introduction. What a panel, wow. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity to say a few words as the co-host of this morning's Liberal Breakfast on the topic of gender equality. You named it. There is a lot of discussions going on. I do have these discussions at home as well. My wife and me, we are both deeply in politics, and we have to share our views and what is going on, how to handle everyday life. That is part of the discussion as well, I guess, maybe even today. But what I wanted to make sure is that we as a liberal foundation, of course, are very strongly invested in this issue, and we do so together with the ALDE party. You have mentioned that. On the one hand, on the European Women's Academy, we are engaged in that since 2016. And Alicia, you are a proud member of this Women Academy. I think you did it in 2018, right? And now you are elected in Parliament. And we have trained more than 70 women since 2016 on that academy. And many of them today are in elected office. And it's not only about this more or less training or grassroots things. We do campaigning as well. And please look out for our next campaign on the topic Female Forward, where we showcase female role models. We did so in Germany, and now we go international. And we start that in October, and we will have a lot of impressive women which we showcase on that issue. So these two things I wanted to mention this morning. Everything else, I think, is in very good hands with Adam, with the panel, and with the cooperation of ALDE and Friedrich Naumann Foundation. So have a good morning, have a vital discussion, and thanks a lot for the collaboration again.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Thomas, and big thanks to you as well, Natalie, for setting this up. It's an absolute privilege to be moderating this discussion today with two fantastic speakers. Really been looking forward to this all week. So happy to step in here. It's been a heck of a year. It's easy to forget this was supposed to be 2020, a milestone year for gender equality, with 20 years since the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, with 5 years since the SDGs were signed by almost every single country on earth, which put historic commitments on paper for gender equality and also for gender within politics and decision-making leadership. It's also the year in which the EU's gender equality strategy 5-year plan was launched. So what a difference a couple of months make. We've certainly had some other priorities to keep us all busy this year. But I wanted to just quickly set the scene before we kick things off. You know, where do things stand with the state of gender equality in the EU? Look, 4 out of 27 EU member states have a female head of state, have a female leader. 39% of the European Parliament is women. We've got 28.1% of ministerial roles across the EU being held by women. 16% of mayors across the EU are women, and so on and so on. I could go on. Clearly, we've got a long way to go when it comes to representation in our politics in the EU. But of course, numbers only say so much, right? If we got to 50-50, even if we got above 50-50, it's not time to go home at that point. We know that when women succeed in politics, they experience disproportionate amount of scrutiny, of harassment, abuse, even violence. And you know, we know that gender equality takes far more than just, for example, focusing on the numbers. So I'm really excited that today's discussion will hopefully move us a little bit further than just talking about how do we get more women into elected office, as crucial a step, of course, as that is. So I'm going to kick things off by jumping straight to our two speakers today, and really just sort of put to you, maybe Monica first, just if you can tell us a little bit about your own political journey, and specifically what got you interested in politics and what made you do something as crazy as decide to run for office. And then Lisha, maybe you can jump in straight afterwards.
Thank you very much, Adam, Thomas, and also Nathalie for the introductions. So as Nathalie mentioned, I was a journalist and TV host for more than 2 decades. And then I decided to run for elections and to get active in politics, because due to my job and also my social engagement like for fair trade or SOS Children's Village, I saw that with little changes, with little measures, you can change a lot. I also tried to do that as a journalist with my reports, of course, but I wanted to do more. And that's why I decided to get active in politics and to join the Demokratische Partei, the DP. So my political career started in 2018, so only 2 years, but in these 2 years, I experienced a lot of positive things, I have to say. As we are talking about gender equality and opportunities for female candidates, political candidates, I can be very happy that my party is liberal, is open. Yes, I felt immediately well in the group, and also the reactions of the voters and the citizens in Luxembourg were very positive when it comes to gender. What I can say is that it's often not only about gender, but it can also be about age. As Lisa and I were quite young MEPs, although 36 is okay. It's still young, let's say, compared to others, and it can be potentially also ethnicity, where people might have doubts in order to vote someone, but. All in all, I can say that my personal experiences were quite positive till now. I hope it will stay like that. When it comes to the European Parliament, for example, or other institutions, but especially the European Parliament, there you can see we have like 41% of women, which is very good, because I was told by former or actual commissioners that when they began, it was like rare that MEPs saw a female member of the parliament, a female which also wears dresses, for example. So this was, you had to act like a man to be respected. But I think that has changed already. So that's also my experience in the committees, talking to other MEPs. It's not because I'm a female, but it's like the way I am. Where we get on well and we work together. I think it's about competences and also the strengths. If you have a strong opinion, you defend it as female or male. But what we need in the European Parliament and other institutions is true diversity. For example, we have less than 4% of Black MEPs in Parliament, and it should be at a rate of 10% to really reflect the European society. So there we should work on. And what I like about this term is that we have many young people. So if I look around in Renew, but also in plenary, I feel very comfortable because we are many young MEPs who stick together and who I think and I feel give a new energy as well to the European Parliament. When it comes to my national parliament, we only have 19 out of 6 MPs that are females. So also on national level, we should do more. And that's what I'm convinced of is that political parties are in charge. Political parties are in charge to have a gender balanced list, but also a list that reflects the diversity of the country. So, and I want to change that. I stick to that. I want to change that, and I want to promote that in my country and all over Europe.
Fantastic, Monica. Thanks so much. And Licia, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background as well?
Yes, thank you for starters for organizing this debate and for having me and for the great introductions. It's a huge honor to be part of this. And when I was thinking about what I could say about gender equality, I thought, you know, who actually should have been invited here is my mother, because coincidentally she is retiring today at the age of 68. After having worked for full-time for more than 40 years. And the only way that this was possible for her was because my dad used to pick us up, my sister and me, from kindergarten so she could finish her work every day. And he would do the laundry so she could do something else on the weekends and have her hands free for other things. And when we think about, and I think by doing this, she not only told us, but she showed my sister and me that there is room for us on the labor market. There's room for us to pursue any ambitions and dreams that we have. And I think this is really great, and I'm really proud of her, especially because this is a big day for her, obviously. And because often when we think about gender equality, we think about big things such as quota, or in the Netherlands, we talk about the first female prime minister. And these are very important things, but I think Thomas in his introduction also told us, it also starts really close to home, and really being in equal relationships and allowing each other to pursue your ambitions and dreams. And when I think about my own political ambitions, it didn't really start with a political ambition at all. I studied communication science, and I wanted to work in politics because I thought it was really interesting how political communication works. And then when I started working for the VVD, my Liberal Party, I experienced how interesting and how fulfilling it was to work on things that really matter for people in everyday life. And that, I think Monica said it very well, by little changes, you can make a big impact on people's lives for the better. And that is why eventually I wanted to work in politics. And someone who has helped me a lot with that has been Janine Hennis-Plasgaard. She was my boss at the Ministry of Defense. She was the minister there. And she really encouraged me to do the same. And it was very interesting to see from up close what it takes to be a politician. And she really encouraged me to pursue this. And obviously, the European Women Academy, which I did in 2018, has really helped me a lot with that as well. The best thing there is that you see a lot of ambitious and great women who all have the feeling that am I good enough? Is my voice worthy enough to be heard? And when you come together in that group and you create a safe space between women, then it's I don't know, it empowers you. And I think the whole group got more empowered. And this is one of the reasons why I think so many of us are now in elected office somewhere, because it showed us that if all these really cool, inspiring women can do this, then maybe I can do it as well. And so I'm really grateful for the EWA. Now, I'm only talking about women for women, but obviously this is also a fight that has to be fought by men, because the men also have to enable us, like my dad enabled my mother, and people in the company, in companies, businesses should not only hire people that are like them, because this is not the way to get more females elected. And I also agree with Monica that political parties have a big role in this, because we can get angry at Ursula von der Leyen that she does not have 50% female commissioners. Well, maybe she does, but that it took her so much time to get as many commissioners that are female as male, because it starts at the bottom. It starts where the women need to be need to climb up in this party. So I think There's also big responsibility for political parties. But if I look at the Netherlands, I feel that these political parties are now really taking up this responsibility, and they are really looking for women and going, not only looking at the letters that they're receiving, but really actively engaging women in politics and also calling them like, wouldn't you like to be on the list? So I think we are moving forward, but we're not there yet.
It's fantastic. Thanks so much, Alicia. There's between you both, there's just so much in there to unpack and explore, raising so many interesting issues from Monica talking about, you know, the expectation that in order to succeed once elected, you sort of act like a man. Alicia talking about role models, you know, which is obviously something that comes up a lot when asking about solutions and, you know, support for more women to engage in the political process. The role of men, something we might come back to a bit later. But I wanted to kind of dive actually into some kind of questions that have been raised, I guess, in light of the last several months and some, you know, big stories in the news and so on. There's been a lot of discussion with COVID, you know, people wanting to sort of look at the various responses of governments and seeing, you know, a correlation between successful women as leaders of countries and responding really well. Maybe there's some relationship between, you know, the different things that women bring to the table when they lead, and their ability to deal with a crisis like COVID. The other one I was just thinking about as I came into the office this morning was with Belarus, and you know, there's a lot of discussion about the fact that it's in many cases women really leading the charge in terms of demanding greater rights and democracy for the nation of Belarus. So I wonder if you wanted to both sort of take a stab at all of the kind of questions that come out of these discussions. I guess the main one is there something unique, specific that women bring in leadership? Or, you know, are we essentializing men and women a little too much? Should we be just asking, you know, what does it take to be a good leader, regardless of gender? So maybe, Monica, I'll throw it back to you to start with.
Of course, I hope we will be confronted with more crises, as we went through several in the last decades. Yes, of course, if women leaders did a good job during the COVID crisis and pandemic and managed this situation well, they deserve the applause. In my country, we don't have a female prime minister, but Xavier Bettel, who did a good job as well. So I think it's about, skills, competences, and crisis management. So it's more about, in my eyes, it's more about competences to know how your country and your citizens will cope with that crisis, because each country is different. You can take New Zealand and compare to Luxembourg. It's impossible to compare. Luxembourgers reacted differently to the measures than the French, than the Germans, for example. So I think as a good prime minister or head of state, you have to know, okay, what's the situation? You have to exchange with the government, because it's a whole government. It's not only the prime minister, it's also the health minister, female or male. It's the finance minister, it's the SME minister, for example, in Luxembourg. So they have to cooperate and find the best solutions for the country and for the citizens, and measures that the citizens accept and react. In Luxembourg, it was a really, really good crisis management and a good communication. So each day you had press conferences of the different ministers explaining why we need these measures, the confinement or the lockdown, for example, how to act. They implemented now a large-scale testing, so that when people come back from holidays, they can choose if they want to be tested or not. But that, I think, it's a team achievement of the government, of the whole government, including the citizens' cooperation and responsibility they take in order to manage the crisis and lower the consequences for each country. That's my personal perspective.
If I may just add a little to that, I agree with Monica that it is a lot about competences. For example, if you compare Jacinda Ardern, you talked about New Zealand, with Angela Merkel, you could say these are pretty different women in the way they communicate and with the public, with their citizens, with the rest of the government, the way they lead, but they're both great leaders. So I'm not sure if you can really assign all these competences to women, but we are fortunate enough to have great female leaders, because they could serve for role models for little girls who see Angela Merkel or Jacinda and think, yes, this is something I can aspire to becoming when I grow up. And I think what you can say about women, that usually we try to compromise. We look for the compromise more often than men, I believe. And you could say that women sometimes have a more better eye for the different interests and trying to find a solution that serves as many people as possible. But I'm not saying that men cannot do it, but I think this is something that women have, I think, comes more naturally.
Do you want to come back, Monica? Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just like to add, if man, female or male, that's something we should also analyze in the following years. But as it was already mentioned a few times from Lisa, thank you for that, as role models. And I think that's so important. And that will also enhance the chances for young girls so that young girls are also motivated to get into politics, for example, or just to have a mindset, I can do it. Not although I'm female, but because, and I'm a female, and I'm intelligent, and I can do a good crisis management. I can lead a company, for example. I can be on boards. So this and mentorship, which those leaders, female leaders, do for years, is very important, I think. And that's also something I would like to foster in companies, so that those few women who had like a successful career and are in leadership positions also take the time to talk to young colleagues, how they did it, or what mindset do you have. Don't be afraid to negotiate or to push for your convictions or your opinion or your idea. And I think that's very important. And fortunately, we have many strong women in politics in Luxembourg, such as Colette Flash, who is also known, of course, here in Brussels, Astrid Lulling, for example, but also our family and Grand Region Minister, Corinne Kahn. She's strong. She was a former journalist as well. We worked on the same place, but she has innovative ideas like a better work-life balance, to a flexible parental leave, which will be extended, and the remuneration is better than it was before, so that more women go back to their work. But it's also parental leave for fathers, for example, so for males, and that's the responsibility, so that women, as Licia explained before, on her personal experience in her family, her father, looked at them so that her mother could work. And so fathers are also in responsibility for the family. And in Luxembourg, you can take one day a week and take care of your kids. And it was a huge success, like a growth in like more than 200% and today it's it's normal that fathers take care also of their children, and that women go back to work so they are safe for the pension age, for example. That's very important. But strong role models with good ideas, they had to fight for that, but it was successful. So I really admire them. I really admire them, and that's good. And I hope that the next generation will also have female politicians, which they say, okay, she got power, she got energy, and has good ideas, and fights for them.
Cool. Definitely, there's a theme of role models, I think, coming through really strong here. Like, clearly, this is something seen as incredibly important. Lisha, did you want to just follow up on something Monica mentioned there?
Yeah, one more thing, because I think Monica described it well with the already successful women in companies or politics, and we do have to make sure that women do help other women, and that's also a problem that we face with ourselves, because sometimes women, it's hard for we see each other as competitors, and we shouldn't. And for example, when you have a board, one woman is the queen bee, two women, they always tend to compete, and then from 3 women on, there's not anymore the feeling of competition. And I think that is something that's also something that women can do ourselves, help other women. And so it's good, as Monica mentioned, that role models and women who are already in the higher places, that they take the time to really mentor younger women and not see them as a threat in any way, because then we will not get any further. And this is something that you see a lot. Women criticizing other women for spending too much time with their children, not spending enough time with their children, and not dressing well or dressing too well. It's we have to have some mercy for each other as well.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Yeah, I think this is all incredibly valuable, what we're discussing here in terms of the importance of role models, women supporting other women. And I noticed in the quick Q&A in the chat box, we actually had a question from Madeline on this very issue of women helping women. Madeline Jakobsen from Sweden, who is like you, Lisa, an alumni of the European Women's Academy. So I do want to come back to this, but I firstly just want to sort of dive in a little further into 3 things that came up in this discussion about female leadership. I'll give you a heads up so you know what to expect. The first one is to come back to this question of age, of young women, girls, and the idea of socialization norms, that are formed very early. I then want to ask about intersectionality, something you mentioned, Monica, right, in your kind of intro. And then finally, we will, because a question also came up in the chat box, come back to this question of the role of men in being allies in supporting greater female leadership. So first of all, age. Something I'm actually quite passionate about. We're a few weeks away from the International Day of the Girl, which is a big moment to kind of really look at the state of girls and young women around the world. And a couple of things that I've always found really quite disheartening is, for example, this study after study showing that at such an early age, girls are already starting to feel less talented, feel less confident. In fact, one study I saw, by age 6, girls are already starting to feel way less talented than their male peers. And you can see this reflected in statistics around representation as well. It's very difficult, of course, there are very few studies that do this, but I've seen some estimates that less than 1% of the world's parliamentarians are women under the age of 40, despite the fact that they're more than 15% of the population. So the question I have for you both when it comes to and you've raised this quite a bit already, but I'd love to just sort of ask you, how should we, or how have you talked to young women and girls about power, about issues like leadership and decision making, and how do we really encourage young women and girls to step forward and have their voices heard? maybe starting with, maybe we'll go with Liesje this time.
Thank you. There's a great example in the Netherlands. We have a school called Weekend School, and this takes children from underprivileged schools to get in touch with or to experience different professions. And these kids are around 10 years old, 10 to 12. And they get to visit the law firms and really get to dress up as a lawyer and plead a single case on freedom of expression or a different big case in the Netherlands. They also get to meet with politicians. And I think this was a place where you could really encourage girls and show them that they are just as good as their younger male counterparts. And you could see if you just already give a small compliment to a young girl, you can see them like light up their eyes and see how that changes their perspective. And first they think they all want to be a hairdresser because that's some of the professions that they just know. And there's nothing wrong with being a hairdresser. And if you're a good hairdresser, please be a hairdresser. But it was good that they got to meet other professions as well. And I mean, there were boys too, but we really focused on helping the girls see their own potential, and that was lovely. And that's only one initiative, but of course, this also has to be in our educational system, and teachers have to be aware of this, and also encourage young girls to have their voices be heard in a more in a louder way. And I think women often have they often feel like an imposter, the famous imposter syndrome, and they feel that they shouldn't be here, or they shouldn't be in politics because why should their voice be heard? And I think the more you see other women doing it, and women of your own age, and that's why I think it's really important to have more young MEPs, and I'm happy to have Monica as my colleague, also showing young girls that when you see other people do it, you think, yes, if she can do it, why can't I? And maybe people will underestimate you in the beginning. Maybe that's not the worst thing in the world, because if they underestimate you, I mean, sometimes it's even easier to get to the top, because people are like, wait, what happened? How did she get there? And actually, I had the privilege to hear the female opposition leader of Belarus speak this week through a Zoom meeting as well. And she said the following about it, like, nobody in the beginning believes that you are strong. Nobody thinks you are a real opponent. But slowly they change your opinion, and then all of a sudden you're there and you are a force to reckon with. So I thought it was well said.
Yeah, very well, very powerful words. Monica, did you want to follow up?
Mm-hmm. Yes, why do, or potentially do, young girls feel less confident on their own talents? I think we need a change of the mindset in society, and this begins with education, as Liesje mentioned. So young girls and boys should not be pushed to traditional roles. So and most of all, they should be encouraged to find their talents, to discover their talents. And if you have a passion, then you just go for it. But they should also encourage to do so. So the first step is education, because if you are pushed already in the beginning, as Liesje said, you will become hairdresser or nurse or what do you say, Lehrer, educator or professor. Then you already have like restricted alternatives. We should push young girls in schools, so the teachers should do that, the teachers, that they can do anything they want, as long as they are passionate about it. That's the best thing to do in life. Then you have a happy life afterwards. What is also helping is, but I think it exists internationally, is the Girls and Boys Day, where girls, they discover some jobs, some employments that are typical male. And the young boys, they discover jobs that are entitled typical female, for example. So just to have the interaction and see, maybe I become an engineer. So also in school, all these professions and lessons, the courses, women should be empowered and supported, not to refrain from going for mathematics, for example. But if you have a look at the classes, you see that the majority are still young male students. So we should change that and encourage them. It will take time. It's like females in finance. I'm the gender mainstreaming responsible for in econ, in the Economy and Monetary Affairs Committee. There we have also the same issue, that we have not enough women on boards. So the candidate lists are balanced the way they can be, but still often a man is chosen as the best candidate. But I underline, it's always about competences, and sometimes they require a number of uninterrupted years of experience in this sector, which is difficult for women. Let's say potential female candidate has finished university with 25 or 24 and worked 10 years. So she's 35, but she wants to found a family, have a family. Then she has an interrupted career, but the requirements are 15 years. So that's already a huge barrier to get on these European supervisory boards. But you have the same in private companies. So there we should also make a change, and internships will help, of course. And what was very interesting was, during the campaign, we were in schools, and they could, the students, they could send with their iPhone or with their phone questions, which were then reflected on the wall. But they could also raise their voice on the microphone, and it was very interesting that most of those who had the questions were really good, but most of them were females. So I was like, wow, you are strong. And afterwards I talked to them and they said, yes, I'm never interested. Now I am. I saw you on TV. Now you are engaged in politics. So I also am interested because it's about our future. And then we had this very good discussion, and I empowered her, many of them, to be active in politics. And I think there's a new generation growing of new female politicians, which I hope at least they are very interested in politics and don't shy away to raise their voice. And that's already a good first step. And okay, now due to the pandemic, we can't visit schools, for example, but that's what I want to do. Go into schools, talk to this young generation, and encourage them to raise their voice, to have a critical thinking, but also to encourage young girls to do their career, to follow their ideas they have. But passion for me, I'm passionate about politics. So they should also be passionate about.
I definitely agree with you. There are some incredible young, talented women and even girls. I think of Malala Yousafzai and others who are really kind of showing that they are incredibly powerful. They are leaders and inspiring others. And of course, you two as well, really, as trailblazers, pioneers, setting an amazing example to young people as well. But we've talked a lot about different barriers to entry for women in politics. And Monica, in your first set of remarks, you also mentioned race. You talked about the fact that only 4% of MEPs are Black. And I wanted to kind of come back to this question of intersectionality. We just talked about age, but clearly there are even more barriers to entry for women of color. And I wanted to know what else can we be doing to help eradicate those barriers for women of color? And maybe Monica, we can come back to you to start with, and then Lisa to follow up.
When it comes to the EU and the institutions and also directives, most of them are focusing the job market. But we should change that also in our own institutions. Commissioner Dalli is working on that to unlock the anti-discrimination directive, which is an important first step. But the institutions should also be a role model and change. It's not only the Commission, it's political parties, of course. Then we would have like more diversity or a reflected diversity in the College of the Commissioners, in the Council, but also the staff here in the European Parliament should also be more diverse, as well as the age. So but it's not only law. It's not only law or only the institutions who reflect that. It has to be a change in the society. And for example, in Luxembourg, I mean, 50% of the Luxembourgers don't have the Luxembourgish nationality. So the other 50% are coming from other countries. And of the 50% of Luxembourgers with Luxembourgish nationality, there are many, like me, who have a migrant background. So that's what I like about my country, because it's so diverse and we live peacefully together. That's really great. But also the Black Lives Matters movement has launched a huge discussion in Luxembourg, because we all experienced some sort of racism. Many people, I think most of young people have also experienced mobbing, for example. It's not only a thing of color. It's like some feel superior over others. And we should eradicate that in Luxembourg, in the European Union. But for that, you need a huge discussion and involve all those who feel discriminated and find solutions how to find solutions to that. But I think discussions are very important, and negotiations and to talk to each other. So raise your voice.
Oh, your mic.
Oh, there we go. I was going too well on that. Yeah, I just wanted to, if you want to come back on anything Monica raised just then.
I think that the Black Lives Matter movement has been heard all around Europe and has raised a lot of discussions, and rightfully so. Also in the Netherlands, we have institutional racism, and people were not aware of this, except for the people who were being discriminated against. And it is good to have this discussion. I think if in practical terms, something that would help to get more women hired, but also people with a different background, is to have also on the selection committees within businesses, within political parties, to have those have to be very diverse as well, because it's human nature to look for yourself in someone and think, oh yeah, he looks like me, so I can work with him because I understand that person. And we have to go beyond this. And what would help with this, I think, is if these selection committees would also be more diverse. And this would be, I think, a good step to, if you look at quotas, why not have a quota for a selection committee instead? And then one of the barriers for women getting into politics, you asked about that in your question as well. And I think because I saw in one of the chats, someone raised the importance of local politics. And I think this is also very important because this is where you are closest to the citizens. I mean, the European Parliament, even though I do my utmost best to keep in touch with the citizens, but when you're in Brussels, it's difficult. And local politics really gives a really a face to politicians on a really close level. So I think that is important. And something else is when you start in local politics or national politics or wherever, a part of politics is losing, and because you cannot always win. And the problem with women, I think, also is that if they lose an election or they are not getting elected the first time, then they see this as a recognition of their own thoughts. Like, you see, they don't want me. It's my message is not resonating with the public. And sometimes you lose, but if you keep going, there will come a time where you win. And so we also have to persevere through these hard times. And it's easy for me to say because I think my political party has been winning for a long time now, but there will come losses in the future. Because that always happens, and then I will not stop fighting for the ideas that I believe in. And I think that's also something that women have to keep in mind.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. And, a huge thanks to all those on the line who have sent in questions. I've been keeping an eye on them and trying to sort of weave in to my questions some of your comments and so on. There's one I think that's come up in a comment from Vic. We mentioned it before. Maybe if you can be very brief, because we are getting closer and closer to the end of our time together. The role of men, it often comes up in conversations about gender across the board. Maybe if you can be very brief, what advice do you have to men who want to be allies in the fight to secure more female representation in politics? Lisa, Monica, you're ready to go. So
I just had a hearing with one of the candidates for a chair in one of the European supervisory boards and asked him the question on gender balance and also diversity, and what he wants to do to promote that throughout all the supervisory authorities. And I liked his answer because he said, in my office, it's already the majority are females. So you have like more female employees than male. Yes, he's doing it, but he chose them not because they were women. And that's what I always want to underline. You should not be chosen just because you are a woman, but because you have the competences, the skills, and you are the best person for that job. I think that's very important. I'm not in favor of quotas, for example, in enterprises, because I'm Black, I'm female, I'm young. So do I get the job because of that or because of my skills and competences? And he said also that his team is very diverse when it comes to ethnic background, but also nationalities. So I think that's the first step. Male leaders should, see and maybe also recognize that if you have a more diverse team, often the outcome is bigger because you have more interaction. Not everybody thinks the same, comes from the same background. Female have a certain kind of ideas, male, but also with an ethnic background and also the nationalities. You have more diversity, also better ideas and better solutions. That's what I think, and that's why it's also the European Parliament should be more diverse.
Brilliant, thanks. And Lisa, if you can be very quick, what advice for men and boys?
Yes. Well, be like my dad and make sure that your wife can go to work and have a career. But also, I think what is very important, don't make this our issue. Don't make it a female issue, because the problem is, and although I think it's interesting because Monica and I have our own experience to share with you, but this is two women talking about the women's issue. And this is often with panels or the FEM committee in the European Parliament, so many women. And we know the importance of women in boards and women across companies, but make this, be a man and be on the FEM committee, you know, also make this a spearing point in your campaign, and not only leave it to the women. That's when you can really help us. And then of course there are a lot of policy issues, but I'm not going to get into that, but yeah, be a man and fight for women.
I see Monica cheering the idea of men joining the FEM committee. Good suggestion. I want to come very quickly to the questions that have been asked by our audience members, and let's start with I think Karina asked about coalition building between women from different political parties. General question, is it time for a European non-partisan organization that supports women to run for office? Not sure exactly what type of organization Karina has in mind there, but maybe it would be good just to have your thoughts. And maybe I'll just take response from one of you per question, so we speed things up. Maybe Lisa, just coalition building amongst political parties. How do you get on with your female peers from other parties?
I think this is something that is already happening in a lot of cross-party organizations. There are a lot of female goals. The only problem is what I said earlier, men have to be involved as well. But I think that also across the parties there are already organizations really working hard, and not only inviting the Liberal Party or only inviting Christian Democrat Party. I think this is already a cross-party issue right now.
Yeah, cool. Karina, I would just do a shameless plug and say, keep your eyes peeled for developments with the European Women's Academy in terms of that organization supporting women in politics. We've got some big plans for next year, so that's a bit of log rolling on my behalf. Monica, there's been a question about encouraging more women to join political parties to help, I guess, increase the numbers of potential candidates and so on. How can we actually get more women to just be interested and join up to political parties?
I think the best is, as a politician, do what you're supposed to do besides voting and making laws. Talk to people. Talk to people, talk to young people. I can't wait to go back to schools and talk to young girls, but also in your own town. Just encourage people. You can also already do it on social media, like on Instagram, like people who live in young girls who live in your village, their pictures, and because they like your pictures, we like them. And if you meet, talk to each other. I think that's the best way. But often young girls are curious, ask me, how is it in European Parliament? And then I explain and try to convince her to just follow her dreams, be it becoming a politician or just doing the job of her dreams. And what is very important is that young girls should be encouraged to have an independent life, so that they are financially safe, independent, and then they can choose whatever they want to do in their lives. I think that's very important as well.
Mute again. Beautifully said. I want to just, maybe we've got time for one more question, which again, just a brief answer if you both can. Flo has asked about unconscious bias. It's a big problem in all parties. How can we overcome unconscious bias? Maybe Lisa, if you can start.
Yeah, this is, I agree, this is a problem, and this is very hard because it's also in human nature. And the only thing we can do this is by having these discussions and being made aware time and time again, because the problem is also that sometimes then you have the 50% women and then everyone thinks, okay, well, this is done, let's move on to the next issue. I really believe that this is something that we have to keep fighting, keep raising, keep getting awareness for this topic. So just keep this topic at the top of our minds for, for a very long time still.
Yeah. And Monica?
Yeah, I just can add that I just can agree with Lisa on that. It's not something that will be solved in with one law or within 2 years. It's a process. It's a process within the societies of the European Union, and we know that each country is different. Females or women have different stance in different countries or member states. So we should begin, of course, in the EU institutions, but also on local levels in each country. That will take time, but it's worth to do so and to be engaged in that, and more diversity in general everywhere where people come together, because as I said, and I can just repeat it, the outcome is greater.
Thanks so much, Monica and Licia as well. This has been just a fabulous conversation. I could keep going for another several hours probably on this with you both, but we have busy days ahead of us all. So I just want to wrap things up and say a massive thank you to you both. You are super inspiring, powerful, talented, amazing women, and we can't wait to keep following your progress throughout the rest of the parliamentary term. A massive thanks to FNF as well, and to Natalie and the rest of the team, I know, who have been working hard at ALDE to pull this off. And finally to our audience, I regret not having more time to read out some of your comments. Of course, we've noted them all there really well. I mean, there's been some fantastic feedback there, so thank you very much for that. I just want to finish with one quote from Ruth Bader Ginsburg, of the Supreme Court Justice of the United States. She was asked once, when will there be enough women on the Supreme Court? And she, of course, answered, when there's 9. And when I think about the men and boys question, sometimes my response is that men need to understand there's been quotas for centuries, and that's 100% men. So why not, change your perspective and think more about, what more women in power really means. So I want to kind of wrap up with that quote and thank you all. Have an amazing day, and let's keep the conversation going. See you all next time. Ciao. Bye.